Eric came in and the stunt car wasn't in the correct place. So he had to go a little farther, grab the brakes, front brake and back brake, which is an iffy. And so as he came in, the bike went down. And when you go down with kind of at a high speed, what usually happens is what's called high siding. High siding means the bike comes down, boom, and goes like that, flips you. So as you're down on the ground, you have to hold both brakes, your pedal brake and your handbrake, right? And you're holding the bike down. You got to have really some, excuse my language, balls, because you're scraping on the ground and you got to hold those handlebars. But anyway, he may or may not have known that. But anyway, it high-sided him, flipped him into the camera truck. He slammed in the camera truck, and the motorcycle came and smashed his sternum, broke his ribs, punctured his lung, and ruptured his aorta.
I have the honor of moderating this CHiPs panel with the amazing Robert Pine. Can I get a round of applause for Robert? Yes, you gotta. We can add and post. It's not a problem. And of course, Larry Wilcox. Actually, Eric did not feel up to doing a panel today, so it's just going to be you gentlemen. But please don't forget to use the mic. All right. So what's Eric's first trait? Please use the mic so we can record this for. No, we don't need to. We don't need to get into that. For many of us, you guys were the stars of our childhood. For you, who were the stars of your childhood that you looked up to? Well, obviously you're still a child, but please use the mic.
Hi, Mike. My childhood. Sid Caesar show. I loved that. And Jonathan Winters had a show on locally that I enjoyed the first time I met him. And I'm thinking, who else was... I'm 84. I forget a lot of things. And I wasn't allowed to watch television all the time. I had to do my homework first. And I hated doing my homework. And which showed in my grades. I wanted to be a doctor. Always wanted to be a doctor. I came from a community where everybody was a doctor, lawyer, or a business executive. Thought that would be a good deal. But I took a C+ average that I had in high school all the way through college and hit the wall with a C+ average. And I tried to get in, send applications into 10 medical schools. And to their credit, I didn't get into a damn one. And then I thought, what the heck am I going to do? And I asked my roommate, who'd I'd been to grade school and college with him, and I'd done plays in high school. And I said, Jeff, what the hell am I going to do now with this? I don't want to go sell narcotics or something to doctors, who became doctors. He says, well, why don't you be an actor? That'd be something. Yeah, that'd be a great. And from there, I became an actor, and I started pursuing it in February of 1964. And by May, I was under contract to Universal Pictures, having done nothing. Yeah, thinking, what's so hard about this business? It got harder. That was a really long-winded thing about what my favorite actors were.
Yes, yes.
But I'm sorry, get me started. You can't turn me off.
I appreciate it, though.
It's Larry's turn.
I do have to say I'm right there with no homework. That was my bane in high school as well and beyond?
Vic Morrow and Combat. I used to like that Army series. And Audie Murphy and all the stuff that Audie Murphy did. I like those. John Wayne. The Westerns, Rex Allen and Roy Rogers and Tano. So those are a few back in the day.
Awesome. Now, I have questions, but if you have questions, please raise your hand and I'll come around like Donahue to get your questions. And if you know who Donahue is, you're old like me. But so I got to ask Larry, on the show, how many tickets did you actually write for anybody? Or did you just let people go? Were you that nice?
No, we don't let them go. We were righteous and pompous. No, I don't, we only wrote a few tickets here and there, but it was really the exchange and the interface with the victim, if you will, the old lady that we stop in her old Cadillac, or she was a neat old character. And some of the kids doing pranks that they shouldn't have done, or the surfers, there really weren't any trauma events that you see in police shows today. So kids and families could watch it, and like John Baker and Ponch and the Sarge. Well, maybe not the Sarge, because he was our dad, and he was sometimes demanding of us, So, yeah, he reminded us of the rules.
Awesome. Now, Larry, I know you're a motorcyclist. How about you, Robert? Are you a motorcyclist, or what's your experience with motorcycles?
If I had continued to ride a motorcycle, I would be dead now. I was a terrible motorcycle rider. I'll tell you the story. When before we'd even done the pilot, they took us over on a Sunday to MGM, the lot where we made it. And so I was heading, just learning the thing, going this way, and there was a sound stage, so you had to turn left or right. So, and you have the accelerator here, and what is it over here, the clutch. And so I'm going there, and I got to make a decision. And I go like that, and that's the wrong way. And I crashed right into the wall. I wasn't hurt, but my ego was just smashed, and it never got better. And when I was out, I went out on patrol maybe once every 2 weeks, or maybe a little bit more, but never. Most of my stuff was indoors. That they made coming into a shot was pretty easy. Going out, they cleared everybody out of the way, because usually I'd go out and I was not a good motorcycle rider. I don't have one in my garage.
Larry, how many motorcycles do you have in your garage?
I sold them all. So I had 6, because Kawasaki was our sponsor, and they gave me a bunch of motorcycles. So I had all my dirt bikes and Kawasaki 250s, and I had the little ones for my boys, the little 80s and 50s. Those were really cool. And then we had 4 jet skis they gave us. So we had a bunch of jet skis. Those were a blast. The old kind that you had to stand up on and balance. And they were more fun than the ones you just sit on today. And so we had a good time. But I got rid of all my motorcycles. I have an electric bicycle now. Looks like an old Indian motorcycle. It's really cool looking. On my website at LarryWilcox.net, I sell those bikes as the 7 Mary 3 bike, right? E-bike. Gave one to Eric, by the way. And but riding with Eric's like riding with Elvis, so you can't ride with him. Yeah, he attracts a lot of attention. But which is good attention. I mean that in a positive manner. But so I got rid of all those bikes, and I don't recommend anybody to, even though in LA you see motorcycles every day splitting traffic on the freeways, going in between the fast lane and the number 2 lane, and every day you hear some fatal accident. And electric bikes today, if your kids are riding them, really, really dangerous. And maybe not out in this area. It might be safer, but a high-density city like Los Angeles, you'll see gangs of 11 kids doing wheelies down the street, just giving you the finger, right? And just young kids, and then running red lights and, just hassling people. And I look at them and say, don't be judgmental like an old man. But the issue is they're so vulnerable to getting killed. And electric bikes they go, So be careful if you give your kids an electric bike or a motorcycle.
So you're not looking for any new sponsorships from any type of motorcycle or electric bike?
I have written a series called Academy that is about motorcycles almost explicitly. And so we'll see what happens with that. But Ponch is the actual motorcycle trainer in this series, and his son is the star of it. So we'll see what happens. And the Sarge is the commissioner.
Well, I look forward to it. Speaking of things that came after, how did Chips 99 come together? And how did it feel to jump back into those roles, though?
Oh, it was
promoted?
fun. I mean, it was a fun thing. And I made it all the way to commissioner in that thing. And no, it was fun. And we were hoping they'd do another one like that, but it never did materialize. And they've wanted for years to do a movie about it, and we've read scripts about it, and they lost the idea of what it was. They wanted to modernize the script, and they were taking out their guns and shooting and stuff like that, not realizing that the audience would be kids who are now grown-ups and wanting to take them to the theater and to enjoy it as a family thing. And there was a dynamic that was very important to the show, and that was Eric being the, guy who went against the rules, and Larry was sent out to watch out for him and keep him out of trouble. And I was the adult, and that was a great, and they never, in these scripts we read, you read some of them, right? And they weren't Chips. They want to modernize it, forgetting who their audience really was.
I can definitely understand that. And if anyone doesn't know, on the original show, they never drew their guns. Not once in the original show.
And when we ever had a big crash or accident, you had to see every person in the accident move around so they weren't killed, because that would, traumatize some of the kids, because it was intended to be a family show that you could watch with your kids, and guns were never drawn. And at the end of the show, you could forget the whole thing, because there wasn't a big message to it, important message. The white hats always won over the black hats, and they were sent to jail or whatever. So anyway, yeah.
Excellent. Well, yeah, I think nowadays most of the cop shows are a little darker, not quite as family friendly, which is horrible. Now, when you were on the show, and I know we're going a ways back, did you have to stick exactly to the script, or did you have some suggestions for changing lines, improvisations at all that made it through?
I've often said that, I started in my career in Lassie, which was easy, right? And then did episodic television, and then did guest stars, and then did pilots for television series that didn't sell. And then did a pilot called Chips that did sell. And after that, movies of the week. And then I went on to produce and direct and do all kinds of other stuff I won't bore you with. But I've often said that the most difficult role that I've ever had was Chips. And people say, what? You said 10-4 and pull over. I mean, what was so difficult about it? Well, that was what was difficult. There was nothing in my character. And so basically the way it was written was there was nothing. And I'd break down a script and write what everyone said about my character, which is what an actor does, right? And what his intent was of the writer. And I would be sitting there with nothing. And I was, what am I going to do here? So basically I felt like the only thing I could do is try to have some charisma and show a friendship and a loyalty and integrity to Ponch, because they wrote him as the star of the television series. I was kind of the straight man in the background, reprimanding him a little bit in polite way as his buddy, friend, and so on, trustee. So I don't know if I answered your question because I actually forgot it. What was your...
Well, did you improvise any lines?
Oh, no. So I didn't improvise. I mean, what are you going to improvise for 10-4 pullover, you know? So, no, to answer your question, I won't bore you with any more detail, but this wasn't much to improvise. Once in a while, a line would be written kind of dorky and you'd change it a little bit to make it real, but not really any improvisation.
Yeah, I was very lucky because I asked Rick Rosner, who created the show, I said, one thing, please. When I'm in a shot, give me something to do. I'm part of what's going on, not having me in for the day to be in the background because we have these two guys or whatever doing something and I'm putting papers away or something. But give me some dialogue, make me involved, otherwise don't use me. And they were very good about that. And I was very lucky because the writers who wrote my part, we had two writers who had a military background, and they wrote very good dialogue for me, being a person who's in charge with it, which had a great deal when I interpreted, being the authority figure that I was on the show. And that was, they were as much, they helped me create the theater, the character very well. And somebody came by and said that he was teaching young cops about leadership, and they used my my role as what a good leader was, and that was a very nice compliment that I'd never heard. Somebody said that today, so made me think I did the job right.
Absolutely. Did that leadership role translate into outside of shooting in real life?
I became a real prick.
Okay. I can kind of get that vibe.
Okay. I don't really think it did anything in my wife. I didn't boss my kids around or my wife, or I'd get slugged if I did. No, I don't think it did, but it gave me a great, and I think we all feel that way, it gave us a great respect for law enforcement. And I'm a member, I think Larry is too, of the 1199 Foundation, which is 1199 is a call that there's an officer down. And this is a thing that was started after CHiPs. And I'm a big supporter of that. Now I forget what the question is, but I'll stop talking.
That's fine. So Larry, in CHiPs 99, you got to be the boss of Ponch. How did that feel?
Futile, though. Couldn't get anything done with Ponch. He was his own person. But I think the most important thing about CHiPs was at the time it appealed to the demographic of advertisers. That's what it was. And so advertisers would pay money to, a lot of money in those days. I remember commercials as a producer, you could charge $150,000 to $300,000 for
a 30-second commercial that today costs $1,500. So, there was a lot of money in advertising, and our demographic, it appealed to a younger buying demographic, the male and female of anywhere from 18 to 34. That was the target. So, and then when they get into psychographic and break down who appeals to what psychographic, it really starts making you aware of the data that is necessary to produce, direct, and distribute content, and who your audience really is. And once you get specificity in terms of that demographic and psychographic, shows could succeed. And it took our show, the first year was iffy. Was it going to continue or get canceled? But the second year we started to get, momentum and pick up an audience, and we could tell. It's funny when you're an actor, you realize that, gosh, the product that you're marketing is, guess what, you idiot. So you got to market yourself. And at first it's kind of fun and indulgent. And as a young male with identity crises, I always say that it satisfies some of those identity crises depending on what you use to satisfy them. Hopefully you satisfy them and move on to maturity. I always joke about the frontal cortex of a male really not maturing till he's about 30, but anyways, and in my case, maybe 40. But it does come along. And so over time, we started to understand our markets and what to do in our markets. And then there's an interesting thing that happens with actors is you put them in, they start realizing about their markets, but then you have a hard time differentiating between, is this guy marketing or is he just has so much vanity that you can't hardly stand him because he's marketing everything, every inch, every word, every movement, every photo opportunity is just over the top, right? So you have to pull yourself back a little bit and say, hey, you're the product, but don't start believing in the product. So, but we had a great time. We were lucky to star in a television series, and I want everyone to know that we're grateful for having done that. We're grateful for being a public relations tool for police officers and, first responders. And I was in the military, in the Marine Corps. I'm always have a special place in my heart for, all military guys. Veterans Day coming up here tomorrow, so God bless them. And, I know this isn't a really large Comic Con, but I personally thank each of you for coming to see us and listening to us, and hopefully I haven't been too indulgent, but thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. I would say the same thing. Without you guys, we're not here. And it's interesting about our show. The first year we were on a Thursday. And we almost got canceled because our ratings weren't that big. But NBC had, I don't know how many shows, new shows that were on. Our show was the highest rated of those shows. So we were brought back, but we almost lost it. The second year we were on Saturday nights, but it was when our third year we were on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock, and that was ideal. And we did very, very well then. So, and as I said, we are very, very grateful to have a series that lasted a while. I'm still looking for another one. But we're very privileged to have had that and to bring this incredibly large crowd here.
Well, we are privileged to have been able to enjoy you guys on that show. Again, if anyone has a question, please raise your hand. I will be happy to come over. If not, you're just going to hear my questions, which get weirder as we go along. Okay. See, the threats work. All right.
Hey, Larry, did you ever have an actual accident with the bikes? I know you did a lot of filming with the bikes on trailers when they filmed it, but did you ever have an actual crash?
Yeah, there's an old saying with motorcycles, if you haven't been down, you're going down. It's just a matter of time, but trite but true. Yeah, I had some interesting little accidents. I'll tell you about a major one in just a second. But, Eric and I got really good on the motorcycles and this is not me marketing. We were cocky and we could ride them. And so we rode in and out of intricate little teeny areas, and a big police motorcycle is always the same. Any idiot can ride a motorcycle fast, but not many can ride it and balance it with clutch and brake, boom, 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 and do a figure eight almost on this table. So that's a talent. And learning to balance that motorcycle became pretty good. Then, typical of youth, male youth, is that you want to push the envelope because you think you have talent, and your perception of talent is an issue. So we pushed it, and, we wrecked the bikes. So then they decided that to get a two-shot, they were going to put us on a trailer, and that way they could hold focus on both actors. They were even, right? There wasn't a distance between them. In the beginning, the trailer was a wheel on the front of the trailer, and the wheel of the back of the motorcycle was on the ground, which that didn't make sense with physics, because the first time we did a turn on a corner about 30, 40 miles an hour, pitched me in the air about 30 feet in the air, and then I landed down on my gun on my hip. I'm really surprised I didn't break my pelvis, but so that was another one, right? And then sometimes we'd clip a bike going in intricate things and hit one of our saddlebags on something, right? Perception issue. One time I was a smart aleck and coming in too hot, showing off, and we were at a big tow bridge where chips go in between it, and it was open. And I slid past the cameras and almost went off the bridge about 150 feet into the ocean. Peed my pants and came back and did it again, right? Really slow the next time. But just to give you a salt for your palate in terms of that question, the only really, really tragic accident was Eric Estrada. And I was in my motorhome. They were doing a scene, did a stunt, and he was supposed to come in kind of hot. And there was a camera car at a certain place, and then he would jump off his bike and do his police work. The stunt man wasn't there. And, different when you do stunts, and I did get hurt in near scary hurt in other scenes that I did stunts in, right? Because we did all kinds of stuff. We did our jet skis. I did all the rodeo stuff on horses and so on. But Eric came in, and the stunt car wasn't in the correct place. So he had to go a little farther, grab the brakes, front brake and back brake, which is an iffy. And so as he came in, the bike went down. And when you go down with kind of at a high speed, what usually happens is what's called high siding. High siding means the bike comes down, boom, and goes like that, flips you. So as you're down on the ground, you have to hold both brakes, your pedal brake and your hand brake, right? And you're holding the bike down. You got to have really some, excuse my language, balls, because you're scraping on the ground and you got to hold those handlebars. But anyway, he may or may not have known that. But anyway, it high-sided him, flipped him into the camera truck. He slammed in the camera truck, and the motorcycle came and smashed his sternum, broke his ribs, punctured his lung, and ruptured his aorta. So then I had been, I just got out of the Marine Corps in Vietnam not too long before that, maybe 5 years, right? So I spent all the time in Vietnam during the Tet Offensive, right on the DMZ in the Marine Corps. So I knew death and, knew the symptoms, knew the eyes. I always say in death, eyes go first. And people say, what does that mean, eyes go first? That's willpower. Because you'll see the people just submit. And you can see them just about ready to die. So we always, first thing is touch the hand to treat for shock. Any skin to skin, you always want to treat for shock. Anyway, I did all that stuff and submitted and told him, don't give up, and screamed at him to pay attention to my eyes, and so on. And then his lungs were filling up with fluid because he was dying, and they sent him to the hospital, and I went to the hospital, and the priest came in and gave Eric last rites, and he was dying, and they were going to see, remember in those days, in the late 70s, there weren't any heart surgeons and doing open heart surgery. There was a guy doing some pigs in Houston, Texas, but that's about it. And so they were thinking they were going to send Eric to Texas and have open heart surgery and see if they could do his aorta. But to make a long story short, they somehow, well, I know how, but somehow he lived. And by miracle, 6 weeks or 7 weeks or 8 weeks later, he came back. And that was the biggest accident that we had on the motorcycles, I think.
I think Larry's being far too modest. He saved Eric's life. Without him, I think he would have been dead.
It's always nice to know that the heroes on TV are sometimes heroes in real life. Do we have other questions? Here we go. You don't want to make me walk. Good.
I was just curious if you could go back and you ever, because especially in the 80s, there was a lot of police shows and everything. Have y'all ever thought about different like crossovers where y'all could kind of interact and get, even if it, and I know it might have been limited just due to the network contingencies and whatnot, but have you ever thought about ones where it would make a lot of sense to kind of have this character interact with this one and so forth? And
yeah, it makes a lot of sense, but it brought to mind when Rick Rosner, who created the show, and I remember when we were just starting, I said, this is never going to sell. Look at all these other shows that have been on. It's just another cop show. And he said, believe me, it's going to sell. No, it's not. And thank God he proved me wrong.
I don't think so. I don't know if it was because of my own vanity and indulgent that I didn't really think about those other shows. And I mean, I did guest stars on all those shows, like Police Story. I really enjoyed working on that. They're really good actors. And there were some other shows that to me were a more dramatic and more intellectually appealing than CHiPs was, right? And so I don't know, I guess I didn't see the interface from my perspective as we were a different kind of show. I don't know. We weren't Boy Scouts with lunch boxes, but it wasn't really very gritty. And so I didn't see any of those. We had lots of actors that came into guest stars in our show, but we didn't do it like you're suggesting, which was really bright that CSI and all those shows today that are doing in Chicago and New York and LA. And, this is a different show in a different city, but it isn't really, right? Talk about leveraging a market and expanding the profit margin. That's pretty impressive. I wish they would have done that, but we didn't. I don't have any good input for you.
I don't know. I think Thelma Harper, Mama, pulling her over, that would have been awesome. Any other questions, please? Here we go.
In your opinion, which episode do you think you jumped the shark and said, what are we doing at this time?
What are we doing? One of those? Instead of not what was the best, what the hell are we doing, right?
I watched every episode, so I'm curious.
Oh, man. There were two in my mind. It's really interesting because there's a whole lesson of psychology of starring in a television series. God, I won't go on, but, it's time to quit looking in the mirror and realize that it's a team and a culture and all that stuff. But anyway, there's a transition for all parties. I'm speaking for myself. And so there's a point where you have a lot of power and you can request, or if you're rude, demand certain things. And I can remember sometimes directors that would come that weren't directors, didn't know what they're doing. And, all the time I did Lassie, someone said, what are you talking about Lassie for? Because I studied camera movement every day at Lassie, right? And so I'd take my little Bolex and go home and edit my 8mm film. And I knew camera left to right and how to enter frame, how to exit frame, better than most directors, and that's a pompous statement, but I mean it to be pompous, right? And so sometimes we'd have directors, and we had this one guy that I really liked that was one of the stars in a movie called Stuntman, Chuck Bale. And I ended up, he helped me get Peter O'Toole to star in a television series that I produced later on called the Ray Bradbury Theater for HBO. And Peter O'Toole, you know, he was a big star to me, a real star, right? I was a wannabe star compared to him. And so we had some show with tigers and giraffes, and we had some dorky lines, and it's like, dude, who wrote this? You know, why are we doing this? This is really stupid. But so that was one. But the second one is, I'll make it as short as I can so I don't bore you. But I went to him and I said, you know, I came back from the Marine Corps and I like to push the envelope. And what the hell's John doing? What's he doing in this television? Nothing. So why don't you do something? Well, what do you see him doing, Larry? The writers asked me. So you're the writers, but okay. You know, I what do? I race cars professionally, and I rodeo professionally, cowboy, and I like rodeos and hunting and fishing, and I like to push the envelope. You know, I'm one of those people that enjoy that for whatever reason. Not ego. I like that adrenaline. And so they said, okay. And next day I get a script, and here's a script where I think you're going to like this, Larry. I said, okay. So I read it. I break it all down. You got to be shitting me. This is what you wrote, really? They say, yeah. Square dancing? You're going to have me square dancing? Where's my demographic, all my psychery? Have Punch doing the square dancing. You know, he's singing and dancing. He ain't going to want to be square dancing, right? They said, oh, come on. You're going to be doing the square dance. I'm going to be sick that day. They said, no, you know, you're get fired for that. So be it. I'm going to get fired anyway because this dork isn't going anywhere in the film business, right? So I got sick. I didn't go for the 2 days. And to this day, every time I see a rerun, I don't see them very often, to be honest with you. But if I do see a rerun and that damn square dancing scene's on, I start laughing because he's square dancing and Eric's square dancing. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, look at these dorks square dancing. What am I doing on this show? That's it.
Yeah, the whole sixth season that Larry wasn't there is the biggest piece of trash. We had everybody was new crew, new producer, and more than half of these stories had nothing to do with the CHP. I mean, I directed something in our fifth season, and I really liked it, and I liked what I did, and I had a real taste for it. So I asked this new producer, I produced something last year. Directed last year. I'd like to direct again. So the season's going on, lousy thing after another. And I finally get the script that I'm to get. It's about the third one from the end. And I had rumors that it was one of his illegitimate sons that wrote it or something. And it was about a magician. And I had to figure out a way to make him disappear in the door. And it just was, I hated it. I hated doing that show because it was so stupid. And I couldn't do anything to make it more better. So, yeah. So the whole sixth season is trash. Okay.
And one other thing, excuse me, Robert, with respect, and in addition to that stupid movie they did. I was like, what is this? This isn't Chips. You just ruined the franchise. You know, this is soft porn on motorcycles and with crass humor, right? But some people liked it. I don't know. Some people said it's the humor today, Larry. You don't get it, you know, but they didn't make much money, that's for sure. But at least they produced the movie and they raised the money. So that's hard work, and congratulations that they got that done. But I wasn't a fan of the movie either.
I'm sorry. There was a
I
sixth
didn't
season.
see it.
There was a sixth season. I wasn't even aware. There was a movie. No. Any other questions? There we go. Let me get my steps in.
First of all, Mr. Wilcox, thank you for your service. This is for both of you, which guest spots did you enjoy doing the most? On other shows, yes.
Geez, that's I did 4 or 5 Murder She Wrote, and I loved working with. She was the loveliest woman, and to show you how nice she was, it was my father's. It was my father's favorite show, and I told her this on the last show I did. And she said, and I said, "Oh, I'm so happy to hear that." And I said, "Well, he's dying now." And he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. If you want a copy of this before it airs, let me know." Now they never let you do that, but she's who she is, and I said, "No, I think," and this gives me chills and I wasn't very close with my father really, but. He died on a Monday, and that show aired on that Sunday. And I think when you give up the ghost, there's nothing in the future, he lets you go. And I always thought that was very meaningful to me. Anyway.
Oh, there's... sometimes people ask you, by the way, you have a great resonant voice. Congrats. You should be an announcer if you're not. Yeah. Oh, good. It sure comes across. It's neat when people have that talent, and we all, like to recognize talent. But sometimes people will ask you, what are you most proud of as an actor? And, instead of, so I'm going to answer it that way. All right. And I'm most proud of a role that probably no one will ever see. But when I came back from Vietnam, then I became a spokesman for POWMIA issues, right? A prisoner of war, missing in action. And so I was in Washington, D.C., giving a speech there, and they asked me to do a television commercial for veterans and American Legion where I would go and be a kind of a PSA to save the American flag. Don't desecrate the American flag was what it was about. That was the intellectual debate of A versus B. Desecrate it's freedom of speech, expression, or not, right? So I went and did the commercial. And every time I did I'm always proud of myself because my memory's really good and I can do dialogue pretty well. And second or third take, I'm done and it's good, right? And so I go there, 30 takes in. And every time I did that commercial, I start crying. And every time I would hear the lanyards of a flag, cling, 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 cling on that pole in Dong Ha, 3 miles from the DMZ, and I can see that flag today, right? And what it meant. And so I don't get upset here, that was probably the role I was most proud of because it meant so much to me, But then to break it down into Hollywood, Police Story I was really proud of working with a director. I always hoped that I would make directors my fan because if they were my fan, they would continue to use me and that would suggest that there was talent or I had accomplished something. So Robert Day was the director. He used me in that Police Story. And then he used me in a movie with Vic Morrow, who I used to like in, we did this movie, Death of something. I killed some girl or something in it, and he was going to kill me. And we had a good scene, and it came off very well, and it was good for my career. Then I got to work with Anthony Quinn once, and Anthony Quinn was a major star. And it's like, wow, Larry Wilcox from Wyoming's working with Anthony Quinn. What the hell's going on here? And he was really a good guy. After that, I got to do a movie with. I was always a big fan of this actor that I thought was as good, if not better, than James Dean, and his name was Michael Parks. And Michael Parks would get a script, and I would read the script and read his role. Of course, I read all the roles, and especially my own role. But I had fun creating a kind of dorky little bald guy that's sucking on lollipops, always wanting to touch Barbara Hershey and, and do things with her. And that was a fun character to create. So that was fun, right? But I got to watch Michael Parks at the same time, which was just brilliant. How he would take a nothing piece of cloth and turn it into a tapestry, right? He was amazing intellectual in terms of what he would weave into the layers of a character. I got to do Dirty Dozen with Lee Marvin. And I created this little dorky dude that's psychopathic and always playing baseball with no ball. And he's pitching the ball, and what the hell is he pitching? There's no ball here, right? And he's announcing the game in his head, and he says he wants to get medals and pin all these medals on his chest, right? And the first scene, I would go to the director, Andy McLaughlin, and he'd say, "Larry, shut up." I said, no, Andy, listen to this, And I would rewrite the screenplay and put the sides underneath his door at 3 a.m, right? So when he woke up in the morning, here's the new scene that Larry Wilcox wrote, right? And he's, "What are you doing, rewriting Dirty Dozen? I can't do that, Larry." I said, "Well, just look at the scene." And there would be some scene in there where I take all the medals off someone and pin them on myself. And sure enough, through osmosis, I finally got him to do it without him saying yes, right? And that's what you have to do, just keep doing and work and work and work and find levels. So that was fun. And in some ways, even Lassie was fun because, you're doing a series where a dog's a star. Lassie gets on, he's not housebroken. I'm housebroken. I get on the airplane, right? And then Lassie's talking on my lines. I'm trying to say my lines. And then the dog trainer, speak, Lassie. Dude, I'm trying to say my lines, right? So that was a learning curve. So to answer your question with a bunch of rhetoric here, there were so many of them that were learning curves and humbling. And each one, the one thing I think in life that I always try to tell my children, you're here to be better every single day. And if you don't have fire in your belly to be better, then that's going to be an issue. So if you accept mediocrity, that's a choice. But, for me, I don't understand mediocrity. And I'm not the one that gets to judge whether it's good or bad, but at least there's an effort there, a commitment. And so I had fun learning from every one of these experts. Robert will tell you that, sometimes I was a nuisance on chips. I'd be talking to the cinematographer, you did a 5.6 with a neutral density filter that cut the f-stop by a half a stop, but how did you match that 22 that Eric was behind Eric Estrada? Dude, what's wrong with you? But that was just, I had this voracious appetite to learn. So that's a bunch of stuff that you didn't really ask, but hopefully I fulfilled your question.
Larry was a pain in the ass.
All right, well, we're just about out of time. Any final questions from the audience? Awesome. We have someone right here. Because then I get my final question, but still no pressure.
First of all, I just want to thank both of you. I did not like school either, and one of my favorite things was to stay home and watch you guys. My parents did not like that very much, not because of that, but because I didn't want to go to school because I wanted to stay home and watch you guys. But what was your most memorable moment on set? Or
tell you what, it wasn't quite on the set, but this is a story on me. This was right in the beginning, and somebody had come in and give these guys their mail, their fan mail, and I didn't get any. And more comes in, and I go to the publicity people with MGM there, and they're getting all this fan mail. Where's mine? And they look at one another and, you haven't gotten any. That really put me in a place that I knew who the stars of the show, and I wasn't one of them.
Yeah, well, he grew on you, didn't he? He did indeed. And I don't know, the most memorable thing on the set of CHiPs. I probably already spoke of it as Eric's accident. You know, that was a meaningful event in our lives before and after. So I think it was that. I'm just searching for momentarily to see if there's anything that's more interesting that you would appreciate. But no, I think that was the most important thing. I think that, you know, there were a lot of layers of a lack of growth and growth as human beings. And those were kind of, I won't go into those because it doesn't matter anymore. But as long as you're moving forward, you know, in the Marine Corps, we always said, whatever you do, do not stay in place because you're going to get killed, right? So be moving, move forward. And I think as an actor or somebody involved in a creative team, and there's so many people involved, that you're just one little speck on the window, even though you're in front of the camera and you get all the publicity. It's like, I can remember a lot of times that actors were so bad that how did this guy become a star, right? Because it's a good editor, good producer. Even those freeze frames at the end of us smiling with the freeze frame with the perfect look, you know, it's all bullshit. It's like, really? They made you look good. They put lipstick on the pig. So, but to answer your question, Eric, I think that his life, that tragic story.
I think it's the whole experience of the many friends we gained from that, the cast, the crew. I mean, it was really a tight bunch. And I mean, I'm in contact with all the people who were in our main cast at one time or another. Paul Link, who played Grossman on the show, he's a good friend of mine and a very talented man. He does these one-man shows. I've never seen a person who holds an audience better in a one-man show than he has. He did another one recently. He's only done one showing of it, but he's going to perfect it, about getting old. And it's really quite funny. And but it's all the friends, Eric and Larry, and I mean, I love going out with these guys on these things. And I know where I am in the pecking order now, and I'm quite happy with it. And but you know, to have a successful series in your life as an actor, a steady job for 6 years, even though the 6 years was this piece of crap, but to have that, I mean, not everybody gets it, and it's a gift that keeps on giving, and I feel very fortunate to have been there.
You made me think of a couple that may be interesting to you, and I'll be quiet. So the first year, Eric Estrada and I were asked to go and do a personal appearance in a car show, right, in New York City, Madison Square Gardens. We said, oh, what does that entail? Well, they'll give you $10,000. You come one day, sign autographs, and you get all the money when you sign autographs, right? Okay, we charge for autographs? Yeah, they charge. So I'm not doing that. That's embarrassing, man. You charging for autographs? That's how naive I was, right? Yeah. Really growing. And so we went there, and and I mean this with humility, but it allows you, you know, when you get to go to the carnival and be the circus star for a day or 2 years or 6 years, so be it. But get over it. It's a job. It isn't your whole life, right? But imagine a young man back from Vietnam who hadn't been anywhere other than Wyoming, where I grew up, and all of a sudden I'm starring in a television series, and I go to this car show to sign autographs, and there's girls wrapped around the building outside in a blizzard storm at 20 degrees below zero, shivering, wait to get an autograph from Larry and Eric, right? Ponch and John. And so we're signing autographs like crazy, and dollars are going into the cigar box, and our cigar box is full of money, right? And we take that money, and then it gets full again, and we take that money and put it in our pocket. And I look over at Eric, and it seemed like I see you're slowing up the line. He says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Every friggin' girl you're French kissing, come on." So that was a learning experience about becoming so-called stars of a television. And then one other thing, and I'll be quiet. So there's a good lesson sometimes in business. We learned a lot about business. I won't go through all the contracts and language. And, you know, I'm kind of a pretty good attorney, but saying you're a pretty good attorney means that you like to walk through a minefield. So be careful what you write, right? But having said that, I learned all this phraseology, if you will, about legal contracts called favored nations. And so if favored nations means if you and I are both starring in a television series and you have your contract, then I write in my contract that the Formula car guy, I get whatever he gets with favored nations. So Larry Wilcox has favored nations, in this case with Eric Estrada, right? Well, Eric Estrada had that accident, and he sued MGM and NBC, and then they said, "We got to settle with you, and I want this and that." And so they gave him a brand new Rolls-Royce Corniche convertible, white with red interior. Of course, Eric wanted white with red interior, right? And it pulls up on the set, and I said, "What the hell is that?" And he says, "Eric, he got a new Rolls-Royce," because, you know, he was in that lawsuit. I said, "I have favored nations in my contract." "So what do you mean?" I said, "Well, where's my Rolls-Royce?" So the next day, I got a brand new black Rolls-Royce with cinnamon interior convertible. You know, it was so hot, man. I'd drive that convertible down to Culver City in California, and all the prostitutes, "Hey, cowboy," you know. So, you know, the evolution of becoming a television star had so many highlights and some lowlights, but really some highlights. So thank you, Eric, for that Rolls Royce.
They gave me a bicycle.
So the final question, you speak about coming to these things. You were just talking about signing autographs. What is the most memorable fan interaction you've had thus far?
Always the same. Usually one Comic-Con a year, someone will come up to me, and I will always have police that come up and say they became police officers because of CHiPs. They were little boys when CHiPs was on. They try not to say it that way, but they usually do, and to remind us how old we are. But what's the most memorable is always the same as the other day I was with a lady, and she started doing it. And she started to sob and then started to cry pretty hard, where you kind of get nervous about how deep she's crying, right? It's a psychological sob, if you will. And she says that her parents were so abusive and alcoholics and in the bar, and the only peace she got in life was watching John and Ponch. And she felt all the calmness in her life came from John, she said. And I just want you to know how deeply I love and worship you, because you gave me peace in the most abusive childhood I've ever had. Now she's a mother and has children, but you can see the scars still. I always say, you look inside a person, you see a road full of potholes. But potholes have purpose. And I always say that, you know, you can construe that purpose with denial, but that's what builds character. Anybody that thinks a smooth road is the way that you're going to get somewhere, no. those potholes mean something. So I hugged her and kissed her on the cheek, and that's probably the most memorable.
Oh, that's wonderful. I have always told my kids that it's the bumps in the road that give you character. Anybody can go down the hill or up, so that's very important. I think one of the thing I'll remember the most is, I think I may have mentioned this before, that a police officer came up to me and said when he teaches his recruits and everything about leadership, he points to Sergeant Getraer as an example of a good leader. And I think that really means so much to me, that I feel that I gave justice to my character. And that's the greatest compliment an actor can get. And I'll take it.
Well, you mean so much to us, and thank you so much, both of you, for spending time with us. Thank you all for being here, this packed room. Yeah, keep it going. Robert Pine, Larry Wilcox, thank you again so much.
This is John Glover, and you are watching Fandom Spotlight. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Lionel Luther recommends it. Have some fun. Follow your fandom.